What you are about to see is a real Farsight board meeting between the Farsight remote viewers and two extraterrestrials who are from a group of extraterrestrials who we at Farsight have worked with for a great many years. Now, we often call these ETs the good ETs, which implies, by the name, that there are also bad ETs with whom we have no contact. We have these ET board meetings regularly, and there are typically two extraterrestrials present for each meeting. Now, to give you some history, on November 13th, 2024, we had an ET board meeting in which we were told that they were going to start showing their ships in large numbers worldwide so that everyone could see them with their plain eyes, and they would be able to record videos of their ships without specialized camera equipment. Now, they announced that people should go outside and look for the ships. They assured everyone that they would be visible. Now, we published the video of the meeting on November 15th, 2 days later. And on November 18th, the so-called drones started to appear in huge numbers all over the world, with governments stating clearly that they did not know what they were or who was flying them. Now, on the 18th of December, we had another ET board meeting, and the primary message of that meeting was that they were going to start using somewhat bigger ships, so that people could clearly see that their ships are not government drones. The ET board meeting that you are about to see now happened on the 15th of January 2025. Now, in that meeting, our ET visitors explained that they are trying to communicate with the masses worldwide, and when people see their ships, they should see these UAP sightings as direct attempts at communication. There is no other reason for the ships to appear. They explained that they want Earth humans to embrace this attempt at communication, and they encouraged people to try to communicate with those who are on the ships. They want the communication to be two-way, not just them showing you their ships. And in order to move to the next level, people need to try to reciprocate the act of communication. Now, our group of extraterrestrials have been totally shut out of interactions with the elite political leadership on this planet. The so-called bad ETs have a complete lock on all interactions with the power elite on Earth. And this includes written agreements between the bad ETs and the United States government and some other governments. Agreements that explicitly stipulate absolute secrecy regarding the existence of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth. The only way that the good ETs have to reach out to humanity is through the masses, and this is what the UAP sightings are all about. So, the next step is for those who are witnessing the sightings to try to communicate back. Now, any form of communication will work. Minimally, you can wave at them. Your hands will work, and waving a banner might be fun. They will notice, and they will appreciate any effort you make to interact with them. Now, ideally, you could also try to contact them mentally. Telepathy is the normal means of communication among extraterrestrial species across the entire galaxy. They do not rely on spoken words in, say, English or any other language. They recognize that Earth humans find telepathic communications challenging, but they want these ET board meetings to give you assistance in seeing how this is done. Now, to initiate any telepathic communication with the good ETs, it is always helpful to have a settled mind. You can close your eyes for a moment and be quiet within. You can even meditate for a minute if you know how to meditate. Then, with your settled mind, reach out and say hello. When you see the ships, they are trying to say hello to you. They will obviously recognize any effort that you make to respond with a return greeting of any sort. Wave, say hi, quiet your mind, and listen. Now, after you watch this ET board meeting, I encourage you to watch our other ET board meetings, which you can find on FARSIGHT'S.com. All of our ET board meetings are recorded at the insistence of the good ETs. They want to completely end the governmental policy of secrecy. Our side, the good ETs, adamantly support free will. If you choose of your own free will to communicate with them, they can and will respond with a friendly smile, I might add. Without further ado, here is the Farsight board meeting that occurred on the 15th of January, 2025. All right, I want to welcome everyone to the January ET board meeting. We have two guests with us today, and I will let them introduce themselves. I've purposely made sure that in my own mind that I don't have any expectations or thoughts about what's going to be spoken. So whatever comes through, just they're going to tell us whatever they want to tell us, and I don't have any thoughts that are sort of predisposing me towards any one content. They told me just to shut up and just to start talking, just to listen to what they have to say. Okay. All right. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. Let us begin. They want to say it is their joy to be here. You have no idea how exciting they are feeling. And it's a real special treat. They have not had a chance to be able to talk to many people on this planet, this prison planet, and it's a real joy for having Farsight organized like this so that they can talk to them finally, and the audience is growing and will grow exponentially in the future. They told me not to ask if I can say something, just to say it, and if I say something wrong, if I make a mistake, they'll correct it. All right. Well, my mind's blank. Waiting for you to tell me. They said it's okay to ask questions. Okay, they want me to ask questions. Okay, well, the questions that everybody's sort of whining about is what's next. Last ET board meeting, they talked about the ships, the big ships. You talked about the ships and bigger ships. And the bigger ships are coming. They actually have been starting. And if you haven't been seeing them, it's only because they're censoring the media and you're not seeing them as much as you used to be. In the beginning, when the ships were showing up all over the place, they couldn't keep it off of the news, and it was coming through all the feeds, and so it was everywhere. But right now they're making a very determined effort to keep things off. But the actual ships are actually showing up. There's a lot of activity in the skies. People should actually still be outside looking. We're not going away. We're forcing things. We are actually also waiting for the presidential transition, which is actually important for us. We will not explain exactly how, but it is going to be an important thing for us. This is the first time in ever that we've had a possibility of having access to presidential leadership, and we don't want to spoil it. And so things are. It's not that it's going to be a completely easy road, and there's still many factions within the U.S. government that don't want us to be talking to the leadership. But you have a truly disruptor president and a group of people coming in, and that's exactly what is needed. The disruptor mentality is the only thing that can actually work right now, because everything is so locked up. So it's like mud that's been baked in and it's solid like a rock, and unless you take some type of a major disruptor to it to break up the mud, it won't ever get broken through. So this is basically it. I want to take a little moment out to answer Aziz's question that he's been asking for a long while, so we'll comment on it. We want to say that we really do appreciate Aziz. They're laughing right now because they're feeling me a little jealous, but they're laughing right now because they do have a special relationship with Aziz, as they do with all of us here. But they particularly want me just to focus on what they're saying. Aziz wanted to raise the issue about the complexity in the ET groups, that I have been talking about them in terms of good ETs and bad ETs, and that served a purpose, that served a function. But now is the time when the complexity of the whole situation needs to actually come out. And this time they want me to shut up because they're going to tell Aziz, because that's been the question on his mind. About the complexity, and they want me to not dominate because I've been dealing with it in terms of simplicity. Aziz, do you want to ask the question, and then they want to talk about your concerns?
Well, to be honest, I'm actually just picking up sort of perceptions around the topic itself. The first perceptions that I'm getting, just sort of a preliminary thing that was sort of passing across my awareness, was the concept of this being a time of breaking out of a cage for our collective civilizations here on the surface of the planet. This is a time where I wouldn't use the word joining a larger community as much as I would use the word that we're just going to be taking our blindfolds off and being broken out of a cage. I mean, our blinded in cage state has been something that they've been looking at. So, I guess we can sort of say from that vantage point, we've been sort of like a gilded bird in a cage, sort of there, something that, the blindness didn't go both ways as much. But now we're suddenly realizing that we're part of this bigger thing, and that attitude, that realm of thought is going to keep crescendoing as we go through the next chapter of human history. And as far as the good ETs and the bad ETs thought process goes, I get the feeling that you can always use that axiom, as above, so below, that phrase. But I think that what you really would see is the type of stuff that you see. I can say it in nature, but when I say the word nature, I don't want to make everyone think of plants and animals and dogs and stuff. That type of nature lacks the nuance that comes with a high level of intellectual thought. The level of nature I would want to, or I feel like they're trying to sort of nudge us to look at, is the level of nature that comes from the natural business environment that we see with multiple corporations, profit-seeking systems. Corporations and profit-seeking systems, those are sort of just names that we ascribe to certain things, but this does involve governments. Governments behave in this very similar lines of thinking. It's just gangs, or if you call them gangs and tribes, that sort of evokes a different meaning, but there really is this concept of you have multiple groups that are in these very intellectually advanced aspects of society. We call them by many names, and they're seeking their own propagation, their own growth. And if we look at that and extrapolate that into a extraterrestrial realm, it becomes very appropriate to sort of think that there is a system of profit seeking, there's a system of expansion and of growth that comes from organized groups of beings banding together and seeking their own growth in a do or die, kill or be killed, yet also including aspects that are more harmonious, like collaboration and joining together. All that type of stuff is nature. That is natural. It's the type of stuff that you see a bit more regularly when I getting the image of anthills. You see it more in that sort of organized groups of beings banding together in anthills, when ants are sort of banding together and forming these intellectually high-level coordinated groups. But we're seeing that here, and if you want to have a sense of how it goes out there, these monolithic ideas where you sort of think of these giant, I don't want to talk down on religion, but if you sort of look at the way that a lot of more simple thought forms of things that you would consider more advanced than the human experience, it tends to bring the idea of these archetypes that are very simple in their definition, simple in their scope, but you sort of look at these grandiose concepts as like a mystery that is a big, grand mystery. And that's not exactly as accurate as saying that there is a level of complexity with civilization building. And that level of complexity that we see in the human experience mirrors itself as life becomes extraterrestrial. And that doesn't just mean non-human beings. That means aspects of humanity that are already out there in space and recursively looking in at the Earth experience and realizing that this is part of the scope of business. This is part of the realm of the territory of business and expansion, and we're a part of that, and we're seeing a big change, and it's a very exciting time. I'm very happy looking at all these changes. I'm sure everyone else who's watching is very happy at seeing all these changes that are happening, where we're seeing these drone incidences happening, and political stuff just sort of becoming a bit more volatile, that is resulting in shifts in status quos around the world. And I think that if we have a very optimistic viewpoint of that being part of the cage that surrounds us breaking down, that's a good thing for everyone. So I'm going to stop it right there. And whoever else wants to chime in can chime in.
Before we do, let me just ask, How many groups are there, and how much diversity is there in our side?
I get the feeling that there's too many to count, and I think it's more of a spectrum and a gradient that I'm feeling in that answer. There's maybe at the farthest poles of our subjective definition of a side, it is quite vibrant in a color that we would choose, but then that color gets more blended in with other colors as we start to look at the other sides of the poles, and that's those extremes are subjectively defined.
In terms of the size, the area in the galaxy, what proportion of the galaxy is sort of occupied by the bad ETs versus you guys, us, and what are the population sizes and the bad ETs and us, and what's the demographics in terms of how big, how much area, and how much proportion population on each side? You guys.
Okay. Well, the first initial perception and feeling is that it changes based on vector. It changes based on the vantage point, the perspective in which you're looking at the situation. From our perspective, from the way we would most adequately understand the movement of objects, we would probably say that they're quite equally weighted, and it would be foolish to consider anything that would be subjectively considered negative to be far outweighed by anything we would subjectively be considering positive. And once again, this is that idea of nature. Nature is a beautiful thing, and I think everyone enjoys when they walk into a park and they see animals and stuff like that, and they think like, oh, this is very pretty, I hear the birds chirping and stuff like that. But if you really get into the heads of all the psychology of what's going on around you, it is quite literally a circle of life. You see animals and their behaviors, and the beauty that we sort of ascribe to that is a sort of passionate exposition of producing more life and reducing more life. And there's a parallel in that, and I think the concept of control, the concept of order, these are concepts that are more appropriate with higher levels of intellect, higher levels of sentient existence, and a certain degree of those things are rather necessary for life to organize itself. But the ends on which organization, order, and control sort of manifest themselves can be subjectively perceived in some instances as very negative, and in other instances as more collectively positive and efficient. But once again, these are subjectively defined concepts, and we should see things as more nature and not be afraid to consider ourselves on X, Y, Z of a side, because those things align with what we personally want to create. So,
if the Earth is not liberated, if the so-called bad ETs won, what implication would that have in terms of proportions and what else for the rest of the galaxy in the future?
To be honest, the concept of liberated, the first feeling I got back is that if we define the concept of liberated as being aware and gaining access to the extraterrestrial experience, to getting access to leaving this planet, or having our civilization extend publicly disclosed beyond this planet, I get a strong feeling that is 100% happening. That is the odds of that not happening is pretty much zilch at this point in the journey. It's just, even if we don't see it right this very second as we're recording it, that is so close down the line of time that it's really just it's going to happen. And so I can't really say that I got many perceptions outside of that in the other direction of a what if.
Okay, let's open it up to others. They're interested in questions that you could ask and so on like that.
So I was getting an imagery of...
Speak loud, right into the mic.
I was getting an imagery of kind of like a bolstering of our population, or a bolstering of the energy that is required to make something actually happen, like start things flowing. I'm getting this sensation of, if you plant a seed but the soil isn't ready, nothing's going to happen. But if you plant a seed in fertile soil, soil that has been I don't know, like fertilized, or it has the necessary nutrients to make the seed grow, then the seed will emerge and into like a beautiful plant. And I think that's kind of where we're at. If you kind of look at, I don't know if you've heard of, I'm just taking this and I'm translating it in however I know, but the Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins is, you have these different vibrations, and you have these lower vibrations that you can have a lot of it, but it doesn't carry as much weight. But you look at certain vibrations like joy and peace and love, and they just carry a higher scale. So humanity right now needs to fertilize its soil, needs to make sure that we have the necessary components, that when the seed is planted, which the seed is being planted, it will emerge and it will grow into something beautiful, as opposed to planting a seed in something that in an environment that's lackluster and toxic, or just kind of kills the seed, kills the idea. But I was also getting this image of, okay, so if humanity can't provide its own fertility or its own conditions that are necessary for the seed to grow, we are going to get bolstered by other beings that will come in and provide the necessary energy for this thing to take off, because it will take off nonetheless. But it's kind of like, okay, it might get slowed down if we don't provide the necessary energy. And to me, I would tell everybody that just toil your inner world, do what's necessary for you to get to these higher states of vibration, like love and peace and joy. So whatever kind of meditative practice that you can do, just so you're not carried away but by the outside state of negativity. So yeah, focus on that. Pay attention to that. If you need to meditate, if you need to do some kind of gratitude exercise, just whatever it takes to get to that higher vibration.
Yeah, I might add a bit just to that, to the human audience that's listening. The meditation is actually important because the ETs communicate telepathically. They're not going to communicate with you with English or Portuguese or French or German or Japanese or Korean or Thai or whatever. They're going to communicate with you telepathically. That's how they communicate among themselves. And if your minds are noisy, it's really hard for them to get through. So that's why the meditation is actually important. One of the unique things about Farsight, if I can add that, they said sure, is before we do any remote viewing, we absolutely have to meditate. It's part of our process. And I don't know any other remote viewers. Dad Smith does that, but other than that, Joe McMonagle does that as well, but in his own way. Anyway, I don't know of any other remote viewer groups that require that, and it's essential for telepathic communication to work. And with remote viewing, that's what you're doing. You're actually using the mind not just for perceptual stuff, but for telepathy. Anyway, so quiet the mind and listen is a big thing for recommendation. The ETs want to talk with you. And by the way, the other thing I'm going to add is don't worry about how to communicate with them. When you go out and you see the ships, try waving. Anything you want to do. Wave, say hi. They're trying to get your attention. Okay, this is question and answer time, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Oh, do you want
Yeah,
to
May, go ahead.
Okay. Excuse me. We had a similar thought process, but I think I'm on the other spectrum of what Intisam was saying. What she's providing is the medicine to what I was hearing. because I was getting to bring awareness to the trajectory of the universe, the trajectory and movement of the breaking down or deterioration of status within a society, to bring awareness to the deterioration of mindset of certain humans and individuals who are in a state of lack, in a state of, like you were saying, that the dead soil within them, who are in this state that it's bringing forth deterioration. And so this is the other side of that. If you're looking at a vicinity of people in authority, whether it could be a boss or it could be, government, it doesn't even have to be as high up in the chain as that. But you're looking at a vicinity of people that are maybe acting out of character, but also within the people, and I was writing it down as fast as I could grab it, that is also within the people, or a team of beings who have the ability to in a sense make shit happen, right? There are beings or entities, ETs, on both sides of the spectrums that are moving towards communicating or whispering in the ears thereof, so why we need to meditate, why we need to plant our seeds in fertile ground, why we need to make sure we're doing these things. Each side, it's all a psyops, right? Each side is whispering in the ear thereof of a different being. And so you have, in a sense, a lot of people being manipulated, take that term lightly in this space, manipulated, or what is the term that we use? My brain's a little fried right now. External influences, I'll say. I won't use the word manipulated, coerced, or external influences on both ends of the spectrum. And so they're moving in to our beings and to our people who have the psi ability, who have the ability of telepathy, who have the ability to be able to receive messages and transmute them and dissect them so that they can bring it forth. But it's not just one side. And so it's bringing awareness to these things of why you need to be able to really clear your mind, clear your space, maybe even fasting, clear your spirit. I try not to bring spirit into this space, but, get into a space of wholeness so that you can pick up on the energy or the true colors thereof of what is happening. If you are, let's say, an employee and you realize your employer may be speaking differently, who's whispering into their ear, can you tap into and see and say, hey, this isn't the right one. This isn't the... They're all fighting for our attention, but they're doing it in a way. I know I'm loud. I'm sorry. Your little ears. You just said something about that.
You're fine.
They're doing it in a way where it's like a double agent. It's like a double agent. They're taking the ones who they know can speak, the ones who have an audience, a forefront, the ones who have an ability to move, to plant, to water, to grow within society, within our businesses, within our schools, within our children. Are you listening? I'm hearing, are you listening? And if you are listening, what are you listening to? Which frequency are you tuned to? Which information are you allowing to be fed into you when you plant, when you grow, when you go to make that difference. And this is why meditation is important. And this is why, all these different forms of balance are important, is so we can find out the distortion in the message, because they are all here. It's the good ETs, the bad ETs, entities, the beings, the other is-bees that are out here in this same war. It's more than, extraterrestrial just means not of this land. So it's more than aliens. It's more than aliens in this space. And so when they are moving, it's like an army. I'm seeing a different factions. I wonder if that's the right word. Different factions of types, statuses of different types of beings, the ones we can't see with our naked eye just yet, or if you can see them, you see them, but not everyone can see it. And they're all moving in, and they're like, all right, Shantae, I know she can hear me. I'm about to say something real quick so that I can feed this information to her. I'm just using us as an example. Paula Dean over here, I know that she can speak with the mindset of this. I'm gonna feed her this information right here. And then they're like, wait, no, listen to me. And so a lot of people are feeling this tug of war within themselves that may cause them to be able, you may feel unsettled. You may feel teeter-tottery within yourself, because you're hearing them all the different factions. They're fighting over you. This is war. Everybody needs an ally. Everybody needs someone on their team. Everyone needs someone to feed information to, so that we know who we have on our side. If I'm a bad guy and I can get this many people over here to dismantle this section over here, I'm gonna do it. If I'm a good guy and I can get this many people over here to dismantle, because it's all a dismantlation of things. It's all deterioration of things on either side of the spectrum. You can't change the word just because one is supposedly good or bad. Supposedly, right? It's perspective. And so I keep feeling and seeing duality and opposition of self, of groups, family, bringing duality and splitting, to split it, duality and opposition of teams or companies or families. If they can bring opposition, they can win the war. So what are you doing? What are you doing to make sure you're on the right side of this battle for us as a whole, as the people of this particular planet in this realm? What are we doing? And my question, not just to our friends that are here, but to you and to you guys, is what can be done in order to make sure we're on the right station, tuned into the right frequency, so that we are hearing the right tones and the right voices to make a betterment of this prison planet, of this space.
So one of the take-home messages that I'm getting for this particular meeting really relates to communication, and is fundamentally telepathic communication. So the prison is operated in a sense to stop communication. That's why the death traps work. You die, you get sucked into the light, you get zapped, and then you lose your telepathic capabilities and remote viewing capabilities. So the entire planet is stunted with regard to communication. So the death trap things have started to be taken apart, but started to be decayed. They're still there, but it's slowly shrinking, and they're going to need our help on our side to fully dismantle them eventually. But the issue is that what Courtney calls the bad ETs have been running this planet precisely because they've stopped the communication. And these crises that you're seeing happening around the world are all part of a plan to keep humanity in a constant state of turmoil, so that your minds don't get settled, so that you can't communicate. It's constantly disrupting. Your social media, always stimulating. The TV, the television, always stimulating. And the fights that you see going on around the world, always stimulating. And so that is part of the shutdown of communication. So you think you're actually communicating more with YouTube and social media and television and things like that. And actually, in reality, you're communicating less. It's all a lot of barraging of you so that you can not have the real communication that really matters, which is literally how the rest of the galaxy communicates. So they're
attacking the minds.
They're attacking the minds. Now, there is a show, a podcast. I normally don't like to refer to things outside of Farsight, but it's called the Telepathy Tapes. It's a podcast going out where they've been working with autistic kids, and where the kids are autistic, but they clearly have absolutely unambiguous telepathic skills to actually see numbers, words, without any trouble at all, complete accuracy. And it's been some Harvard research on it, and there's a new documentary out, but they also have a podcast, and you can also see some interviews going on YouTube. So if you have a question about whether telepathy actually works, it's actually useful to watch some of the telepathy tapes programs, because you can actually see it working with absolutely clear, absolutely unambiguously. And that's where their physical brains have been altered in a way because they're autistic, so that they're relying more on the telepathic stuff, and then the telepathic stuff comes out absolutely as clear as a ringing of a bell. So you actually sort of have to convince yourself that the telepathy isn't some type of vague, foggy, fuzzy thing. It's really clear, and it's supposed to be really clear, and you can really see that in the autistic kids. Okay, let me pause for a second. And so the big message here is communication and quieting, and they desperately want to communicate with everybody. But quieting the mind and listening is just as important as seeing the ships. They don't want you to just see the ships and be panicked. There's ships out there. They want you to see the ships, and they want you to wave, and they want you to quiet your mind and listen. They're trying to communicate with you. That's the big thing.
Trying to truly save this planet. And I find it, pardon me, Courtney, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. They want you guys to talk, not me.
They're really trying to save this planet. While, obviously, there's another branch trying to destroy, which we already know, which we've already been doing over the years, and centuries. And what is so funny to me right now is I have a habit of somehow reading fantasy books, and every fantasy is truth. Fantasy books that are very direct to what's going on in my life. I have no clue how I do that. And in the middle of a series, Yes, I'll share into some. I felt it. I'm in the middle. I just finished a series this morning where they where the humans messed up the land, and these beings materialized, and they were like, "Oh no, they're trying to kill us, take over our world and our planet." And in reality, they're trying to help the planet. Do not be confused. They're not trying to harm us. And then there was another version of these same entities that were trying to harm the planet, but they were also under that same mind control. And in reality, nobody really wanted to, and it was just one bitch. But anyway, not to get too deep into the storyline, I find it funny that I was literally traveling, cross state lines to be here today, listening to this, and then I'm hearing it in real time. And so it shows the patterns of how these entities are trying to talk to you. We receive messages in ways that may be not abnormal, but we'll receive messages in ways that you may not know is a true message. We know the angel numbers and the, oh my God, this song is saying this. Like, everything is a frequency, and like even down to my mother this morning calling me, saying I asked a question, to spirit, to my highest self, to God, whatever you want to call your being. And I turned on YouTube, and my top 20 videos were the answer. And she was laughing like, I haven't been listening. It's been right here the whole time. It's been right here the whole time. So what has been in front of you the whole time? What have you been seeing or hearing outside of the, the angel numbers and the cute things that we see here and the moon phases? We're not talking about that. We're talking about what's directly in front of you, in your face, blatant, loud, and verbatim, that you're not listening to, that's going to lead you down the right path and direction for you to have your purpose, to do what needs to be done, to listen to the right versions of what needs to be done, so that we can all band together and not be separate. If we are on the YouTube and the Instagram and all the shenanigans with the social media and the music that's planting seeds in our ears, if we are listening to that, how can we change that frequency? And how do you know, hey, this came on in this reason for this time? My life is like a movie. I pull out the driveway and it sounds like the soundscape of a movie, and I'm like, well, that was interesting. Let me pay attention to that song. Why did that song choose to come on during this moment? Pay attention.
I might add, for the audience's sake, especially for our new audiences that are joining us, is that one of the reasons that Yeme has such strong telepathic capabilities is, Yeme, you can correct me or shut me down at any time, but she was blind for most of her life, legally blind, and she couldn't see. I've seen her try to read a book at that time, and she had to hold it 3 inches or 2 inches away from her, and she had to go letter at a time to try to figure out what each letter was. She was just blind. And she's had an operation since then, so her eyes are probably the best in the entire room right now. She's sharp as an eagle right now, but until then she was blind. But she was a model, she was up on a podium, and then she was surrounded by a zillion photographers who were all, staring at her, and, there's a lot of predators as well as good photographers, and she had to be able to sense the people. She couldn't see them, so she had to sense them with her head, so her telepathic skills were needing, just like with the autistic kids in the telepathy tapes program. She was blind, and she needed to know who was going to be friendly and who was not going to be friendly, who was honest and who was not honest, and she only had her mind to be able to do that. So telepathy was really important for her, and it was something she relied on. And then when she got her eyes fixed, she had an operation to get her eyes fixed. and the telepathy stayed with her. It was a muscle that she had used so reflexively, so normally she kept using it, fortunately. And so that gives you an example of how people really have this telepathic capability, but sometimes they don't use it unless they're forced to use it. And in the case of the autistic kids, they're forced to use it. In the case of blindness, in the case of Yeme's case, she was forced to use it for survival purposes. Yeme, you might add a little bit of that, and then we need to have Shantae and Kamaya talk, but you might say something about that.
That's real. And even now, like, sometimes being able to physically see can be a handicap to your spiritual sight. And that's something I'm learning how to balance now. At first I was upset that I got my eyes fixed because I thought I lost my abilities. And I started to second guess myself because what I see here is different than what I saw. And so now I don't trust myself. But when I couldn't see it all, that's all I had. And so I had to trust myself. And so that even for other people who are moving in spaces of figuring out how to trust what they're seeing and or hearing and feeling, in the duality of, like I said, that it's a duality within yourself. Everything is a double-sided coin. Everything is, even within yourself. And so with these abilities, is very accurate. And to this day, I'm still looking at the times in which I now lose faith in my true sight because I'm capable of physically seeing now and having to make sure I'm turning on the right frequency to be able to find faith in my true sight. And so it's an interesting path for me, being able to open my eyes and see for the first time in some years since I was 7.
But now we have a situation where we have an entire 8 billion people on the planet who are in some way, shape, or form blind mentally, and they have to be convinced that the mental capabilities to communicate are real so that they can talk like we're talking to our ET friends. We need to get Kamaya and Shantae talking now. So let me shut up and go ahead.
Sure. So what's been emphasized for me lately is resilience. So my question for these beings was just, what role will resilience play as we continue to move forward? And even as even in the case of a prison planet, there are humans who are still able to find their peace. They're able to find their abilities in meditation and find their awareness, and even in the circumstances that they have. And it just, as currently we can be bombarded by what we're not doing. This focus on what we're not doing, but as I know Intisam mentioned with gratitude, or it just keeps coming back to the resilience. So look at everything that you as an individual have established, but even as these beings are looking at humans, how we're still able to exist on what is a prison planet and what could be beautiful conditions. They see still the potential there. And what they're giving me is kind of an analogy of if we have just a general human body, and there are many, many processes happening simultaneously. There seems to be a prioritization of certain processes, and we should not ignore certain smaller processes, as if there's distraction. Perhaps to distract ourselves from the distractions that are leading us away from those processes that are actually really important and actually we should show gratitude towards. Yeah, I don't.
There's a lot to be
You're
grateful
saying
for.
it.
Yeah, you are.
You're saying
true.
what you're saying it.
Yeah.
I think the psychic ability development requires a lot of resilience. That's especially because the society itself wants us to. It incentivizes the turning off of those abilities. It's the level of agitation. So I when you said resilience, that was the first thing that came to my mind. That is exactly what's necessary to push through all of the other distractions. Actually, you said it again when you said distracting from the distractions. I mean, that is literally what is necessary. In fact, that also ties into a little bit of what you were saying earlier, Yeme, when you were talking about I'll use the word synchronicities just as a generalization of the universe itself, sort of hinting, or the physical manifestations of life around you in your space, hinting towards sort of encouraging you down these sort of lines. It's space itself it's actually, the Matrix kind of touched on this type of thing. Space itself doesn't have the limitations that it implies to our bodies on our awareness. Now, obviously, we do remote viewing. That's something that we prove with every one of our projects. We are able to perceive without the limitations of space, but space itself, not having that limitation that it has on our physical bodies, but on our awareness, that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves. And the way you remind yourself is by experiencing the nonlinear nature of space. And by experiencing the nonlinear nature of space, how do you do that? Well, you have to engage in practical psychic or psionic tests. Remote viewing is a practical test to show you the nonlinearity of the mind. And to continue that requires resilience. It requires discipline. It requires you to keep revisiting the topic, because if you do it once, it's kitsch. It's fun. It's this thing that's just like, oh, it's that cool thing I did one time. If you do it all the time, it's your lifestyle. It changes you as a person. And that's one of the reasons why meditation, at the very least, needs to become something that's very involved in your life. In fact, I would say that, well, first of all, this actually even goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning, Auntie-san, when you were talking about well, I'll summarize it in this concept. There are too many beings on and off this planet that are invested in the corporation, if we call it Earth Corporation, that are invested in Earth Corporation turning into this new, more positive, less caged thing, because that's a more profitable system. The more open system is a more profitable system. There are other detractors. There are other beings. Obviously, there wouldn't be a conflict if there weren't detractors. But the tug of war is going in one direction because there's too many people, too many beings, too many groups that are vying for that. That's our concept of saying we're being helped along this path, because there's too many people wanting this to happen. You can parallel that into a litany of other things that you see out in the world in just nation states, political groups, and just general corporations wanting to make deals to get avocados in the United States or whatever else that you want to apply it to. As above, so below. It happens at macro level scales. It happens at micro level scales. Another thing that this is so important. This is so necessary that you develop your psychic abilities, because there's this, as a society evolves, like there's this concept, actually we were talking about this earlier off camera, there's this concept of a superstructure. It's this Marxist communist concept that Karl Marx came up with. And he basically was saying the higher levels of society, now I'm going to butcher this for anybody who's actually like a big political science person. But anyway, the concept of a superstructure is basically saying that the higher levels of intellectual society, law, order, the fact that there's governance, police, all that type of stuff, hospitals, this is based on a foundation. That foundation, from Karl Marx's perspective, was industry. I mean, how are the cops going to have the guns and the syringes for the doctors and all the stuff that sort of makes these roles? It only happens because of this foundation, industry. So the superstructure, the thing we sort of see as our advanced civilization, happens on top of that foundation. Now, we are entering a stage in which we are developing another superstructure on top of this new foundation. It keeps going up levels. So the new superstructure that we're looking at right now is going to, in a sense, bifurcate in two realms. And I don't really think those two realms are completely separate or segregated from each other, but a lot of people in, I guess, our audience and just the general world, they sort of look at the idea of transhumanism, technological evolution of humanity, as a negative concept. I'm gonna sort of put an asterisk on that. I think that the idea of abandoning the electronic evolution of technology and how that integrates with humankind, it's kind of like a screwdriver. It can be used for good things. It can be used for bad things. You can screw in a screwdriver to an oven and then you can have warm food, or you can put it in a bomb and then you can blow somebody up. I mean, it's tools, but it's the concept of having this new superstructure. Actually, this was in Ghost in the Shell, actually, because we're talking about little things that are media and stuff. I was watching Ghost in the Shell standalone complex second gig, and there's this guy named Kuze, and he basically is describing the creation of a superstructure, and this is going to happen in our world. We're going to watch it happen. I think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, because it's not far off. It's when brain chips become a thing, and they're expecting that to be a thing by like the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to be not just in people who are disabled, it'll be in like the average Joe Schmo. We're going to replace our phones with brain chips in the future. Now, if you don't like that, but you're psychically inept, like you're not pursuing the evolution of your epigenetic line, you are in a situation where you are just going along with the flow. It doesn't matter how much you complain about the fact that you don't want chips or technology in general in your body. You need to keep in mind that evolution is the only way. You have to evolve. And if our society is evolving, the interconnectedness of our species is going to happen. That can happen through the development of our psychic abilities organically, if we put our ducks in that basket, but it can also happen through technological means. And it's going to happen to both groups. A bunch of the civilization is going to just go straight headfirst into this cybernetic type of experience. A bunch of us are going to be a little bit more hesitant. They're going to try to develop the skills needed for telepathy in different ways, because it is possible in other ways. But those two things, if you want a choice, you got to have resilience. You got to have the resilience necessary to put in the work, to put in the practice, because every single day that you put in the practice, you literally change your genetics. There have been studies on this. They have shown that if you take a morbidly obese person and that morbidly obese person has a child when they're morbidly obese, the genetics to make the children more susceptible to fat storage happens, because you had the baby while you were obese. Now, they did the same study and they checked for those genetic markers after they gave the person liposuction. They didn't have to diet, they didn't have to exercise, anything. As soon as the fat wasn't on their body, the genetics of that person showed that they did not have precursors towards excessive fat storage. The same thing's going to happen to you if you start meditating every day. The more you meditate, the more you understand the proper alignment of mind. The more you understand the proper alignment of your mind, the more that these psychic abilities, these developments like remote viewing, these other things, they are going to be fluent to you. They're going to be understandably not mysterious. They're going to seem logical. Technological things are not going to seem like they're just mystery when you start looking into the nuts and bolts of how they're created. The mind, the biological computer, is the exact same. When you realize that your thoughts are dead confetti, and you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotion. This is all dead confetti like in a snow globe, and our world is constantly making it shake so that the snow globe pieces are all floating around. When you realize that that's not you, then you have the control. And suddenly, when you realize that your nature of perception is nonlinear, then you are right there at the precipice of understanding how to enter a transhumanist future with your head held high, using organic means that are already in your body. You won't have that rush to put a chip in your brain. Now, I'm not saying that I actually have a very negative opinion of chip in the brains. I actually love cyberpunk stuff. I think I have a very positive opinion of implanting technology. However, I do recognize that that can be horrible. You can have a horrible outcome from that. But I'm just pointing out, because I know that people have differing opinions on that. You can't just say, I'm blind and it's okay. That's not a good option. Don't go down that path. But Anyway, I'm gonna stop now. But yeah.
Okay, there's before I just want to mention one thing. The take-home message apparently for this entire meeting is one of communication, and they want me to emphasize that when they show their ships, they're trying to communicate. So communication is the number of is the ships that you're actually seeing. And they want to explain what would happen if they just showed more ships, bigger ships, more ships, bigger ships. It just focuses everybody on the physical stuff. They've already shown you enough ships. They have them flying all over the world now. They're all over the east coast of the United States. They're all over the west coast. They're over Britain. They're over Africa. They're every place. They have been showing you enough ships. That's not going to solve the problem to have a ship over every single house. They're showing you the ships is communication, and now they want to say they need to communicate with everybody, the 8 billion on the planet. That's the communication message that's coming across with this one. So they want you to graduate from just seeing the ships to talking with them, reaching your mind out. That's where the telepathy comes in, because that's how they communicate. You have to trust that it actually happens. That's where the telepathy tapes program actually comes in use, because you can see it's obvious it's happening with autistic kids. That one means everybody else has that same capability. So communication is sort of the next step. That's the message, the take-home message from this meeting. The other thing I think that's useful that they're saying is telepathy works by mixing all the thoughts together like a soup. So they're starting by giving us some ideas, and they're smiling from ear to ear when they see all of us take those ideas and start talking and extrapolating on them, and then it becomes a big discussion where everybody is sort of just jumping in and expanding them. So it's not just like a channeling session where people just where the entity being channeled is doing all the communication and everybody else is just silent and listening. Telepathy works when some people start it, and then other people chime in, and then everybody's sort of shouting and talking, and the minds and the thoughts actually blend together. So when you actually are trying to telepathically communicate with the ships, with the people on the ships, that's what they want. They want you to understand that you're reaching out, and it's the thoughts you have to get used to the feeling of thoughts blending, and then your reaction and so on. We're running a little bit out of time, so we got to get to Kamaya. Kamaya, you're up next.
I don't even got nothing else to say. Like, y'all said so much just now. I feel mentally exhausted. Like, for real. I'm just going to say that I saw a ship last night, above my house. It was very cloudy outside, in a perfect, clear circle. Whoa. Right above my car. I just stood there and stared at it. And it was cool. I looked around, I was like, am I tripping? I looked back. Cloudy. And it was huge. And I've been feeling weird ever since.
I never get to see the ships with my naked eye.
Yesterday.
Yeah, but here we are talking about everything, and she's got a ship over her own house. You didn't even say anything. Keep talking now.
Right. I mean, it was cool. And I felt really calm. Not that, like, I was, like, protected, because I don't feel that way. But I feel like they were kind of just, like, watching over me, you know? And it's crazy that they pop up the day I'm supposed to be here with y'all. So.
It was like, what's up, girl?
It was like, we'll see you tomorrow.
It's probably them.
No, I told you.
You did say that when you got here. You said it was that dude.
Been looking at me. But
did you get any other images that came along with that?
No, like, I guess for me, I'm more so focused on, like, playing my part and playing my role. So sitting here and talking about it, it's not fulfilling to me. I like to go out into the world and, like, actually just tell people, like, oh, did you see that alien? I saw that one above my house. That's cool. I've seen this. I heard this earlier today, actually. Like, stuff like that, I guess that's where I feel my connection to this whole thing is. So it's like when we sit down here, I feel very overwhelmed. And there's a lot of mental discussions, verbal discussions, all happening all at once. So I sit here and I might look like I'm not interested, but it's more just like,
it's a lot.
I feel like it's like a download every time I come here.
That's interesting.
I do have a
Yes.
question for you, Kamaya. When you said you feel like your purpose within this space is a little bit different, and so since you had that visualization, you said you felt weird. Can you pinpoint what feelings and other feelings and thoughts may have arose since you have seen your ship?
So, like, personally right now, I've been going through a lot of, like, trying to quiet a lot of that mental chatter, especially because I'm trying to kind of, I guess we're all trying to do that, right? Balance what we're doing here and then balance, like, reality, real life. And so it's kind of like I'm trying to navigate through that while also sitting here trying to navigate y'all through it. And I don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, this is what you need to do. When right now in this moment, I'm also just experiencing it myself and trying to navigate those feelings myself. So when I say it feels weird, it just feels like, I don't even know how to describe it to y'all, like abstract thoughts and feelings. And I can't even concentrate on them right now because Courtney's walking around and touching stuff and looking at things.
Well,
Our cameras are running out of batteries.
Over here
Our
touching
cameras are running
things.
out of
Y'all
batteries,
done
so-
talked the battery's life out of them.
Well, I will.
Kamaya, your battery is still going, so we have to wrap this up.
Okay, well, I definitely will say, I just wanted to add, I saw a UFO 10 years ago, but in Atlanta, and I was so excited about it. It was one of the cigar-shaped ones, and it was sort of like towards the evening time, and I saw it in the sky just being like a cylinder, and then it was going like this, and it was close. I mean, it was close. It was literally like if you saw like a segment of the MARTA train just up there, and it was close enough to where I would say if you multiplied the height of the trees, we have tall trees in Georgia pine trees. If you multiplied the height of the trees by like 5, then it would be like up there. And it was like, and that's pretty close for like an object like in the sky. That's like very close. And I could see it like this, and it was like hovering like this, and it actually disappeared behind the tree line. And I remember I was with my friend. My friend was smoking a cigarette on the porch, and I ran into the street yelling, "It's a UFO! It's a UFO! It's a UFO!" He did not come. And then
Dare he?
I'm going to cut this off now because some of our batteries are actually dying.
Okay.
So I'm going to cut this off. I want to thank everybody for coming and for our guests for being here. And this is really a great thing. And we will see everybody again next month. So remember, the bottom line, the take-home message is communication. When they show their ships, they're trying to communicate. And now the message here is mental communication is the way to go. Don't rely just on the mainstream news. Go out there and they want to say hi. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And everyone did great. And I want to thank our guests for being here. It's a special treat when we meet you. Okay. Actually, they say, yeah, okay.
I sometimes feel like
It's
there's
the
another
same
one
people
over here
that
too.
when they meet, they're not meeting us for the first time. But when you guys come, it's a great thing. All right, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.